Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are undertaking a monumental deep dive into a stack of sources that really challenge how we view love, the most universal and yet the most intimate of experiences, but filtered entirely through the lens of cinema.
Yeah, this is all about how reality isn't just recorded by images, but, it's actively shaped by them.
Yep.
We're going to be spanning the entire history of film from, the Lumiere brothers' first public showings, all the way to the high-tech dilemmas of Black Mirror.
And our mission here is to trace that dramatic evolution, all while using a really interesting guide, Roland Barthes' seminal fragmented text, A Lover's Discourse.
Exactly. We're asking, how has the camera captured, controlled, and sometimes, utterly deconstructed the act of falling in love?
And this whole topic is immediately relevant because the physical act of just watching a movie is fundamentally changing. We're living in what the scholar Francesco Cassetti calls a moment of relocation.
That is such a crucial concept. Cassetti argues that for cinema, which is now over a century old, to survive, it has to redefine itself in two ways. The first is delivery.
Okay, so that's like maintaining the film itself, the story, the high-quality image, but watching it completely outside of a theater.
Right, like streaming a classic movie on a tiny screen during a flight. The object is the same, but the context is totally different.
And the second is setting, which is almost the opposite. You try to recreate the experience no matter what you're watching.
Yeah, you sit in a dark room, you buy popcorn, you get rid of distractions, you're prioritizing that feeling of immersion, even if you're just watching a YouTube short.
So we're trying to save the experience of the theater, even as the screen itself shrinks.
And that really grounds us in this idea that image making isn't just entertainment. It's a profound, almost primal human need. You can go all the way back to the origin myth of painting itself.
Oh, from Pliny the Elder, right?
Yeah.
It's such a simple, heartbreaking story.
It is. A girl is saying goodbye to her lover before he leaves for war. And in this moment of just deep sadness and necessity, she takes a piece of coal and draws the outline of his shadow on the wall.
So she can remember him. So image making is born out of an act of desperate love, a way to save a memory before it fades.
And even before the camera could do that, we had these pre-cinema devices setting the stage. In the 17th century, the magic lantern projected still images. Then in the 18th century, you had phantasmagoria.
Right, which used optical tricks to project ghosts in dark rooms. Pure entertainment.
And then things like the zoetrope, these optical toys that created the illusion of movement. But what's really interesting is how the very first modern viewing experiences immediately showed this social divide.
You're talking about Edison's kinetoscope.
Exactly. Around 1905, it was a private viewing cupboard, really just for one person, and it was often used for, erotic or risque movies.
So it's intimate, private, and right away it establishes that visual structure of the early controlling male gaze.
But the definitive moment for cinema as a public spectacle? That belongs to the Lumiere brothers.
In Paris, 1895. Dark room, giant screen, ticket required.
Yeah.
That single event just established the social contract for the next 50 years. Film was a shared, authoritative experience.
And from that public beginning, we jump straight into the golden age. Classical Hollywood filmmaking, roughly 1915 to 1955.
This is where the capital, the creative center, shifts from Europe to Hollywood, and the market was just brutally controlled by the big five studios. Paramount, Fox, MGM.
And the rules they imposed were everything. First, the producer was way more important than the director. The film was a product, not an artistic statement.
It had to be commercially successful, and thanks to the Hays Code, it had to provide explicit moral clarity. Evil must be punished, virtue must be rewarded, no gray areas.
Stylistically, this meant total transparency. The narration was central. The camera was placed so you, the spectator, always felt like you were at the center of the world in the best possible position to understand everything.
And this structure is what elevated the close-up to being one of the most powerful shots in cinema. It literally becomes the space of emotions.
And it's wild to think that, according to film history, early spectators actually had a hard time with it. The idea of a gigantic human face filling the screen was confusing.
Wait, really? Confusing how? Like they didn't understand what they were looking at.
It was a visual hurdle that they had to learn to read, but once they mastered that language, the close-up became the ultimate way to create emotional identification.
So when a director like Carl Dreyer in The Passion of Joan of Arc in 1928 used only close-ups, it was this extreme stylistic statement.
It forced you to confront emotion on a scale that I think perfectly mirrors a lover's obsessive focus on the beloved's face.
And that obsessive focus is key. The whole studio system also relied on genres, westerns, musicals, film noir. It was a commercial contract based entirely on a simple principle.
Repetition and variation.
The repetition guaranteed recognizability for the public and, of course, profitability for the studios. You knew the contract going in.
Right, take a Western, like John Ford's The Searchers. You knew you were getting the Death Valley setting, the outdated clothes, and John Wayne playing the hero. You came for the comfort of that formula.
But then you have film noir, which was late to develop for a very specific reason.
Because it challenged the moral clarity of the Hays Code. It was modern because, there was no real happy ending, no clear winner. The values were complex, questionable.
I'm thinking of Orson Welles as the lady from Shanghai and that incredible scene in the Hall of Mirrors.
Oh, it's a spectacular sequence. You literally question if the characters are hitting a body or just a reflection. That visual confusion is a perfect metaphor for the moral ambiguity of the whole genre.
So classical Hollywood built this world of contracts, repetition, and visual control. But you mentioned that structure starts to collapse around 1959. What broke that contract? Was it just exhaustion or?
It was reality. Brutally enforced reality. The shift was accelerated by the trauma of World War II, specifically the horror of the Holocaust and the atomic bombs.
Those events just introduced this profound uncertainty. If mankind could destroy itself, the old moral clarity of Hollywood seemed, it seemed irrelevant, dishonest even.
Exactly. The narrative had to change because you could no longer convincingly depict a world where authority always wins. So we see the rise of the conflicted anti-hero.
Like in Nicholas Ray's Rebel Without a Cause. It uses that beautiful, legible studio style, but it's focused entirely on disenfranchised teenagers. And it's asking, why are they rebelling? There's no good answer.
And then you have Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire. He was, sexually attractive, but he played this repulsive, violent, alcoholic brute. The film creates this profound cognitive dissonance in you.
And at almost the same time, a visual revolution is happening in Italy. Neorealism.
Yeah, from about 1944 to 1952. And this was fueled by a deliberate refusal of the spectacular, propaganda-heavy fascist cinema that came before it.
So the new grammar was jarringly real. Long takes, screenplays about mundane life, non-professional actors.
A total rejection of spectacularity. No huge sets, no elaborate lighting. The theoretician Cesare Zavattini championed this idea of pedinamento, or tailing reality.
The filmmaker acts like a detective, just tracing the real flow of life.
So it's not about finding John Wayne fighting a villain. It's about capturing a man trying to fix his tire on a Sunday afternoon and making that desperate act the ethical core of the film.
And that ethical tool often painted a very grim, pessimistic picture. Look at Bicycle Thieves. The father and son's search just leads to the son witnessing the true desperation of poverty.
And the ending of Rossellini's Germany Year Zero with the child committing suicide, it's just profoundly tragic. It refuses to give you any comfort.
Meanwhile, in France, the Nouvelle Vague, the French New Wave, erupts.
These directors, Truffaut, Godard, they were film critics, they loved classical Hollywood, but they also embraced the ethical sincerity of neorealism. They knew the old rules so well they could break them systematically.
This was the narrative revolution, the idea of camera stylo, the camera as a pen, the director as the author.
And that freedom led to them shattering the classical contract. Look at the final shot of the 400 Blows. The young boy, Antoine Doinel, his frozen gaze looks directly into the camera.
Which was completely forbidden in classical Hollywood. It breaks your fantasy, it stops the illusion and forces you to think.
Which brings us to our core theme. How all this aligns with the obsessive, fragmented, and intensely subjective idea of love in Roland Barthes' A Lover's Discourse.
Yeah, Barthes sees love as this vocabulary of intense, isolated episodes. It's often unreciprocated, and it's driven by fantasy, repetition, and loss.
And our first, maybe most powerful case study here has to be Hitchcock's Vertigo. Detective Scotty Ferguson is a traumatized man, and the film is visually dominated by spirals.
A figure of repetition and descent. It's a perfect mirror for Barthes' idea that the lover feels cursed to pass from one love to the next, where every new love is just a different version of the first one.
And Scotty doesn't just let it happen. He actively manufactures the repetition. He takes Judy and forces her, through her clothes, her hair, to physically become the ghost of his first love, Madeline.
He doesn't love a person. He loves an image, a fantasy.
So love becomes this act of psychological control. And this is exactly what Laura Mulvey's famous feminist critique addresses. She used Vertigo to demonstrate the mechanics of the male gaze.
Her point was that the whole visual structure of the film is controlled by Scotty's point of view. The woman, whether she's Madeline or Judy, is passive.
Yeah, even when her point of view would logically be better for the audience, the film prioritizes the male character's gaze to keep the fantasy and the control intact.
Okay, so let's move forward. The 1970s, New Hollywood, post-Vietnam, cynical. We get Scorsese's Taxi Driver.
Travis Bickle, a highly traumatized conservative figure obsessed with cleansing the city. His romantic desire is completely misdirected. It's delusional.
The isolation he feels, you see it in those long voiceovers and the solitary drives. It's a perfect reflection of Barthes' idea that the lover is often trapped in their own discourse.
Love exists primarily in his mind. It's divorced from any real connection, and that fantasy turns violent. His desire to rescue women is really about imposing his internal order on the world.
And as we move past 1975 into postmodern cinema, the rules change again. This era, up to about 2001, is all about spectacular entertainment, blockbusters, and intense genre mixing.
Like Alien successfully blending sci-fi and horror, but crucially, these films often reflect on the artificiality of reality itself.
We get the untrustworthy plot. You, the viewer, are invited to play a game, constantly questioning if what you're seeing is real. Is it a dream? A hallucination?
Think of The Truman Show, where reality is literally a TV set, or Inception, which plays with layers of consciousness. The film isn't hiding its artificial nature.
So let's apply Barthes to this fragmentation with Nanni Moretti's Sweet Body of Bianca. The protagonist, Michelle, is a math teacher who loves math for its predictability.
Right, he has this profound inability to fall in love because he keeps trying to reduce it to a mathematical equation, something predictable, solvable. He idealizes Bianca as this pure, distant image.
Which connects directly to Barthes' concept of atopos.
Yes, atopos is the Greek word for unclassifiable, for unforeseen originality. Michelle seeks predictability, but the person he desires, the beloved, is fundamentally unique. They resist classification.
The beloved is a topos because they can't be imprisoned in a stereotype or a formula.
Exactly. And then we can leap to contemporary global cinema with Wong Kar-wai's Hong Kong Express from 1994. It uses this intimate, low-budget style to focus on urban alienation and the chaos of waiting.
And in that film, love is shown almost entirely through longing and absence. The characters often speak internally in voiceover, which directly mirrors that fragmented Barthesian monologue of the lover.
And objects absorb all the emotional meaning. There's that heartbreaking detail of the man who buys 30 cans of pineapple, all with the same expiration date.
A countdown to forgetting his breakup. The food literally expires before the memory is allowed to. It just captures the absurdity of trying to control grief.
Finally, we have to look at contemporary TV series. We'll focus on the Black Mirror episode San Junipero from 2016.
Right. San Junipero presents this narrative of immortality and queer romance, all enabled by technology, a digital afterlife that lets love resist death. It's one of the few examples we have of reciprocal, successful love.
But even this perfect, constructed relationship still aligns with Barthes. Because of the central question it raises, is this love real, or is it just a performance in a virtual system?
And the whole story is driven by the human fear of loss and the desire for permanence.
Barthes would absolutely recognize that fear as the core engine of love.
So, after all this, what does it all mean? We've traced cinema from guaranteeing moral clarity in classical Hollywood to embracing ambiguity, and now to a view where love is often isolated, performed, or constructed digitally.
I think the synthesis is that cinema has continually tried to capture the experience of love, despite what Barthes points out, that love is intensely personal, often painful, and resists being classified. It's a topos. The medium's obsession with this elusive subject hasn't gone away. It's just changed its technology.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. If love, as we've seen across film history, is inherently an act of repetition, of finding the first love in a new body, what current visual medium, streaming, social media, gaming, what is currently shaping your expectation of desire? And is that medium building an image for you to love, or is it genuinely trying to capture a person?